Hello, all you sick little fucks and all you sick little foxes. I'm Joey,
I'm Matt.
I'm Kristen.
and this is Messing with the Master, a podcast where three lifelong Tori Amos fans reflect on the iconic singer-songwriter's catalog by thoughtfully and intentionally reorganizing each album into fresh playlists that explore Tori's musical legacy, as well as our own interconnected personal narratives and friendship, which began with a shared passion for Tori's music over 20 years ago. Tonight, we explore Tori's surprising and subversive 2001 concept album, Strange Little Girls, where she reimagined a dozen songs written by men from the perspectives of the women the songs were about, both explicitly and implicitly, without changing nary a lyric.
She'd run to the town one day, leaving home in a country fair. Just beware when you're there, strange little girl.
The accompanying photo booklet featured still images of Tori portraying each of the song's 13 characters. One song is technically a duet by twins, thanks to the sheer wizardry of late great makeup artist Kevin Aquan. The album also marked Tori's very public and somewhat acrimonious departure from Atlantic Records. The album was conceived shortly after Tori's daughter was born. As she told Blender magazine, "I was nursing Tash in Florida, and I was hearing a lot of male artists on radio, and some of them really hated women. I thought about my daughter and what these guys were thinking about women. I wanted to build some kind of bridge, and I figured that was the only way to get into the heads of these men." Notably, the record was released just 1 week after 9/11, and Tori, the road warrior that she is, bravely and generously kept her promotional commitments and her entire world tour intact, holding space for collective grief and community night after night. Traveling across a post-9/11 America is, of course, what would then inspire her next album, Scarlet's Walk. So join us as over the bridge we go, looking for love. This is Messing with the Master, Strange Little Girls. Hello.
I cannot believe that you went for sick little fucks and sick little foxes.
What else?
What?
What else would
What
you
else-
go for?
What else would I do? I have to be political here, right? And I have to, you know,
It could
show
have been
both sides.
It could have been bespectacled librarians and Vegas showgirls working the cocktail shift. But
Yeah.
I like
it
Sick
could
Little
have,
Fox
but-
and Sick Little Fucks. Talk about another very niche controversy that appeals to our audience.
And our
Correct.
friends at Songs with Tori Amos, where
That's
you can be
right.
team fucks or fox, and I'm
Right.
team fox.
Right.
Wait, team what?
Fucks or fox, and I'm team fox. What are you?
Fox.
I'm Team
Fox?
Fox.
Tori
Why
Amos
would, you
would
say
not,
why would she say Sick Little Fox? That makes
'Cause
absolutely no sense.
because it's like
Like an Austin Powers thing. You little
yeah,
fox. Yeah.
it's like Jasmine Fox me in her grove.
I mean, I think it's purposefully ambiguous.
Do not
I
bring
think
another
she-
girl's paradise into this.
I don't think she
That-
herself knows. I think anything that she has confirmed or not confirmed is BS.
I think a good place to start with talking about Strange Little Girls is to get a little bit of context, because up until 2001, Tori was really, I would say, renowned for her live covers. You know, her live
Oh, yeah.
covers were of legend everywhere in the music world, and she did things that nobody expected her to, put them into her own sort of vernacular, and
Mhm.
they always sounded like Tori Amos songs. You know, it sounds like she could have written these songs because of the delivery and the playing
Right.
and what she puts into that, and she's done that. You know, she had been doing that rather long before Strange Little Girls. So when we get to Strange Little Girls, it doesn't feel like, to me, too much of a jump from kind of what she was doing, except for the refinement of the concept. So I think her sort of long and notable dalliance with covering other people's music, and even sometimes some really obscure music, serves her well on this record.
I agree. And I think that we'll get into it much more, I'm sure, but there's such a distinctive vibe and sound and tone and production style to this album too, that it still feels like a Tori Amos album, but you also feel the performance of it. She even kind of sounds a little different, like she's singing in a slightly different, like it's a deeper voice, a richer voice. It is kind of matter of fact and kind of plain, but also still quite strong and beautiful. And she does really interesting things with her vocals. But it sounds like firmly, um, she's firmly like doing she's like very vividly enacting the concept song to song. Like you hear the performance in her voice, like different than what she would go on to do with like American Doll Posse. Like I'm not talking about that kind of, sort of voice switching that she does between characters. And that's different because those were her original songs. But I felt like she was a vessel and she was interpreting the songs. And as I mentioned in the intro, she's doing it from the perspective of the various women who are in the songs, either directly being sung about or dreamed of, or directly harmed, or just also kind of imagining stories that are not part of the lyrics, but that she sort of like took a kernel of something and interpreted it as this other thing. And so you hear, I don't know, like the songs almost feel like translation and narration, as opposed to like, right? Like there's something in the way she delivers it that feels like it's translation.
I was going to say the exact same thing. It reminds me of her just being an interpreter of these songs,
Yeah.
right? Like a master interpreter. And the attention to detail, especially when it comes to the vocals on this record, is mind-blowing. I listened to this one not usually as an album. I usually have it either on a random playlist that cycles through, or in maybe small chunks, but never all at once. So I think when I was listening to it this past week or however long to put this playlist together, I was really paying attention to the vocal details. And I mean, they're just immaculately recorded.
Yeah.
It's, that's the case typically with Tori to begin with. It's not like a new thing, but because the concept is so tight, there's, a parameter for the exploration that she's doing. So it really like is a restraint, I think, in a lot of ways that keeps her really focused and really on track, especially with the vocals. I'm always saying she's like a sonic character actress in a way, and we had discussed that in a couple of the interviews that I did with her about interpreting her own songs. But it reminds me a lot in places. There are times through the record where even one word, the way she says one word in some of these songs is just gripping. And there's so much attention and focus put sometimes on just one word or one breath or one beat. It's really fascinating to sort of look at it 20 some years later and see all of those like eye-popping details.
Yeah, and I think you make a really good point, Matt, that part of the reason why I think she was able to pay attention to those little details is because these songs were already written, right? So the boundary was already there. Like the lyrics were there, the melodies were there, and she could focus on the interpretation. She could focus on the way she produced and recorded, the decisions that she made in terms of arrangement, keyboards she would use, right? Like how she would present it to us. Probably the hardest part of the work, which would be composing songs, is kind of out of the way because Tori can, Tori's a prodigy who learned by hearing, right? And just, played by ear. So I'm sure she listened to the original songs once and was like, okay, I'm going to do it this way. And then it was done, like she's got that sort of like gift. So she could then put all that, polish sounds like the wrong word because the album is so sparse in so many places and so naturalistic. But it is so refined. It's so intimate. It's so right in your ear that it feels like a technical marvel in a lot of ways.
100%. And I never really thought about it that way. about not having to have the duty of writing the songs. Like that's one
Right.
less thing that you can just cross off your list, right? So
And it's a big
now
thing,
you've
yeah.
got and now you have much more time to think about these other things where I'm not saying that she doesn't think about these things. Obviously, that's not the case, but people who are geniuses, when they can laser focus in on something, really can turn it out. And I think what she did here, we could probably talk about how maybe in the fan community, the idea that Tori was going to be putting out a covers album wasn't news, maybe, or wasn't a shock. But I think everybody in the fan community tends to, maybe have a little bit of disappointment when it's not a full album of original music, right? So
Oh, yeah.
we're thinking, based on what our ideas are in the past of what her covers are, that maybe we've heard it before. So I think this is another of those cases where we're thinking one thing, Tori Amos is thinking completely in a different direction, and we will never guess what she's going to do based on just the basic description of what this album is.
Right.
What she does here is fills it in just so beautifully and kind of smashes the idea of what a covers record can be. I think it's really that good.
I had a lot of assumptions about what a covers album would be, not just from Tori, but from other artists. And I wasn't, I wasn't not interested, but I think because Tori had been doing covers and doing them in her own way for so long, I was sort of like, what will this kind of add to her repertoire? I wasn't fully on board, but then listening to it, you're like, oh, okay, I get it now.
There was a lot of, you put it really mildly and really retroactively calmer than it actually was. People were catastrophizing about her doing a covers album. People were in
I wasn't
denial
happy.
about it. People were not happy about it. The internet was ablaze. And I think there was a thought that there was like something creatively bankrupt about a covers album. And in retrospect, it's weird that anybody would ever think that Tori would put out something that was, subpar or didn't, wasn't something that mattered to her. But there was something about like the panic, like a covers album. Why would there be a covers album, right? Like it was very, people were not happy about the prospect of it. And then I think as visuals started to come out, as they started to hear things, and then they realized that she was going on tour with it, and then she assured everybody right away, I think before this album even came out, she was like, it might have been Spin asked her like if she had anything, like if this meant that she had nothing to write about, and she was like, oh, just wait for my next album. Like she knew that she was doing a Scarlet's Walk concurrently, that we'd get another album 1 year later, right? That's where that confidence is, right? Like, this is just to hold you over. This is to get out of this record contract. This is for me to play around and experiment, but you're getting an epic record, epic in both ways, 11 months from now or whatever, right? Like, so that's really cool on her part.
You just hit on something I think that's really important, and I think there maybe was a perception that this was one of those like throwaways because her contract was up, and because it was a covers record. That's the easiest way to people just sort of have these ideas in their head that, oh well, she could just shit that out overnight. That's not the case. I mean, this is a really again, immaculately detailed, immaculately recorded piece of work that has a lot of thought behind it, a lot of context behind it, and a lot of heart. So I think in retrospect now, it's really hard to agree with anyone who thought that this was going to be just a throwaway. It also, I'm sorry, but it also speaks to where you were going with the press being contentious with her when they're asking her about the record she's putting out, and she has to like give them something more. Like, what more do you want? There is a record out right now and it's really good. Let's talk about that. She shouldn't have to talk about the record she's writing, even though that's brilliant that she's doing it. But again, it's just there's a lot of misperception and a lot of opposition to Tori at this point in her career in the music world and in journalism. And looking back at it now, I mean, not just saying this because I am a fan, but it's really revealing and really shocking to read some of that stuff in retrospect. People were just like being very openly contentious with her.
Oh God,
Yeah, all of the stuff that we've been reading and doing our research for, obviously these current years, but also the next season, it's shocking to me how okay we are to beat up on women, but in particular Tori Amos for some reason within the female music world. But one thing I was thinking about, and going back to what you said about how like how could anybody think it would be like creatively bankrupt, I think that's what I didn't get. Sometimes it's like I think we all came to Tori young, and as time has gone on, it's grown, and like you experience it differently each year, each season of your life. But what I didn't understand at the time was I wanted to hear Tori's voice, right? I wanted to hear Tori. I wanted to hear Tori's words, Tori's outlook on the world. I didn't want to hear covers. And like now I just realize that how you said she's a translator, she's an interpreter, like that has always been the case with her music. She feels like she's an interpreter. And so she was an interpreter for this too. She was a translator for this. And her taking that original material, like she absolutely has something to say. She has something equally, if not doubly powerful to say about those messages. I just didn't get it at the time.
And and let's not make any mistakes here. There are some really radical ideas on this record, really feminist ideas, really cutting edge. I think, she was talking at the time in 2001 a lot about pornography before anybody was really talking about it, as porn was really starting to go into the stratosphere even more than it had been because of the internet and because of whatever, all the websites. And some of the things that she said about that I thought were really candid and really helped with the dialogue around that. And a lot of that stuff was very new and very disturbing, and she was shedding a light on it. I admired that a lot. And also I wanted to think about, while she's making this record, I don't think it should be discounted that she's also a new mother who went through a lot to have a kid. And, here she's talking about, again, really dark subject matter right after she has a kid, right after it's been a long road to have a kid, and like tackling really dark subject matter head on. And I wonder, how much of that is just doing the work and how much of that is, self-therapy. And I'd be so fascinated to talk to her about how that worked during that time, right? Sensitive time.
Yeah. And I think Kristen can speak to this a little bit differently than I can. We both have children, and we know that those early weeks of just sitting with and holding this newborn baby and feeding them and rocking them and being with them nonstop, it's a lot of time to think about the world outside. This was particularly potent for me because I became a father right at the beginning of the pandemic. So I was home and the outside was not safe. And so we were really like cocooned in this way. And so it made everything more concentrated. And I was, scared about the world outside. Like, what would it be like? Like, here I brought this child into the world, and I don't know what condition the world is going to be in for him now. And I think all parents have those moments, but I think you can speak more to it, Kristen, that giving up her body to this child and thinking, especially a daughter, right? And thinking about, oh, I'm putting, this connects back to last week's conversation about Geraldine's quite a bit, like thinking about motherhood and thinking about what we leave to our daughters, especially because the patriarchy is so intense and so violent and so twisted and so poisonous in so many ways, that I can't imagine how much more, that worry, that concern, that fear penetrates a mother thinking about this for her daughter, right?
I know everybody experiences it differently, but the actual like hormonal changes that you go through during birth and after with both kids. So I've always been a night owl. I stay up really late all the time. It's where I do my best thinking. And because you have a baby who's crying or you have a nursing baby, it's a different scene. I had these moments where I would be nursing one of the kids, and it would be really quiet and really dark, which is my absolute favorite time. And I would just feel like crushing weight of the world and like, but also the
Yeah.
silence at the same time. And it
Yep.
kind of does remind me of that stark nature, that like chiaroscuro kind of vibe of Strange Little Girls. We were watching the People versus O.J. Simpson, the Ryan Murphy show. Was it Ryan Murphy? Yeah.
Mhm.
We were watching that around the time one of them was little, and I just remember I would have these like really intrusive thoughts sitting there nursing and just thinking about how awful people are, like domestic violence especially.
Yeah.
And that came up in my mind because I'm thinking about being a new mother and just how awful people are. It would just like, it would haunt me. It's like weird sitting there in the middle of the
Yeah.
room in the middle of the night, nurse. And also I think that nursing does weird stuff with your hormones too. But so I've often thought about her because I can't imagine being creative in that time. I can't really, and some of these tracks, as we know, are extremely haunting. And I'm not just talking about Bonnie and Clyde. Some of them are extremely disturbing.
Yeah.
So it's very fascinating. If I could sit down and talk to her, I would have so many questions about this time.
I think so. I think the haunting thing is something, when you listen to the record as a whole, that really comes through loud and clear. You know, it's one of the really important layers. I'm thinking of it when I listened to this like really intently in the past, listening session. To me, it had like a layer of grime on it,
Mhm.
which just like, it was just a little bit dirty, and in a good way, like in a rock and roll way. But it's also stark, and I think that adds to the haunting nature of it, because it's so blunt in spots. And again, none of us are musicians, so we don't really know how to talk about music in those terms, but in terms of the musicality of it and the orchestration, it's just exacting, and I think Joey, I believe you interviewed Adrian Belew when we did the Pop Matter Spotlight.
Yeah.
And I read a little bit of it this week. And he said something like, working with Tori, what he was most surprised by was her producer's eye, and how immaculate of a producer she was working on this album. So that's what a revealing, like, great reveal. Like, he had worked with her, he knew her, and she revealed that to him in this session. That's fucking cool.
Yeah, and he said that he was with her for a few days, and he had done things. He did things with her for those songs in a few days that he had not done in a 30-year career. Like, he was experimenting because she was like, yeah, do whatever, try that, and he had sort of free reign. He said when he got there, the majority of it was already done. So he got to just like sit with like new age and just like play guitar over it, or experiment with, the sort of drilling sound in I'm Not in Love, or, figure out the right, guitar for Strange Little Girl. Like, and it just sounds so fascinating that, she sort of, it's like she put down her work and then she let the men around her make their contribution, which in its way is also an extension of like the feminist conceit of the album, right? Like, here, I'm going to reclaim and do this, and now you can add to it now, right?
It's
like,
very
there's something
big
about
dick
that.
energy.
Very
Really
big
like
dick
it.
energy. Yes, like now you can go and add your little guitars to it, right? I love Adrian Belew's guitars so much. I think they're maybe my favorite guitars on maybe any of her albums, and I kind of wish that he was on. I asked her because he said that he would love to work with her again. I said, "Oh, if you talk to her, let her know. I'd love to work with her again." I remember a friend of mine listening to it when it first came out, and he was like, "I don't know. It's just kind of a bummer." He's like, "The album's just kind of a bummer. Like, it's just kind of joyless." And I was like, "Yeah."
It was a joyless time.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was.
the atmosphere of the album, it's super moody. It's really, I have to find a different way to say dark, but dark applies
but it's
here.
It's really unlike any other album tonally. It really stands by itself. It really does.
It's true, but when Tori decides she's going to do something like on the edge and in the realm of the shadow, she really goes all in. And I was out for a walk today. It was beautiful, 70 degrees, clear, sunny sky. I'm listening to this playlist. I'm like, oh my God, I have this one followed by Night of Hunters, folled by Pele to round out the first season of our podcast. That's some dark shit.
Book. Yeah. Yeah. And this album for me so very much lives in like a very specific kind of like weatherscape, which is again kind of like that changing season, probably because of when it came out, but like changing seasons in a way that like feels a little ominous, you know, like when that first cold snap hits and it does, you know, it feels a little creepy when the sun starts going down a little bit early. I feel like that's where Tori Amos shines, you know?
Yes. By the dark of the moon, you would say.
That's right.
Can I talk for a second about something that I really love talking about? Songs that did not make the cut.
Ooh.
On this record.
Yeah, that's
good. Getting right to it.
I have always kept mental track of this, and my mind is like a steel trap when it comes to the unreleased tracks from Strange Little Girls, but I have some notes here. So first and foremost, from the great state of New Jersey, Bruce Springsteen, and I believe Joey talked to her about this cover, which she remembered.
well, because Matt Chamberlain had said that he did something in those sessions with her that was his favorite thing he ever did with her, and he wouldn't say what it was just in case she ever used it or released it. So when I asked her about it during the Pop Matters Spotlight, she thought for a second and she was like, oh, he means Growing Up. Yeah, we did that together. And I was like, you did a studio version of Growing Up? She's like, yeah, just me and Matt. And
that's so awesome.
I was like, are you gonna? And the response was just, maybe, we'll see. I always have time for Bruce, is what she said. But she never put it out anywhere. And the idea of just her and Matt Chamberlain, just him, you know, on the drums playing a really fast, like I bet it was really fast and really up tempo. And I could see why I didn't make the record necessarily, because I don't think it fits with the concept per se, but I want to hear it really badly.
So what about Public Enemy's Fear of a Black Planet?
I don't need to hear that.
I think it was a good call that she didn't put that on.
I'm interested. I'm interested.
I can't imagine it.
She's covering Eminem, for God's sake. Why not? And also, let's flash forward to just last year when she covered Kendrick Lamar. I want to hear her way into it.
There's just some covers I just absolutely cannot imagine.
I don't know. I think the problem was probably that she was, because there was a commitment to keeping lyrics intact on Strange Little Girls. I think that a Fear of a Black Planet cover would have had to have been more of like, I feel like she would have had to have reduced it like to like the chorus or something, you know, and not done the full song, because I think she was right to realize that she couldn't find her way in. And she has said that it inspired Little Earthquakes, like the honesty of that record, the production of it, the lyrics gave her the strength to try what she did with Little Earthquakes. And I believe that 100%.
Yeah, I do too.
But I can see why it's just not. So I remember listening to that song for the first time after she mentioned it 20 something years ago. And I was like, how in the world would she do this?
That's what I'm
saying. I'm fascinated too, but I just don't know.
So two more. Hoover Factory by Elvis Costello and the Attractions.
No,
honestly, I'm fine to not hear that.
And she performed it live. She performed that live in 2005, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was part of the Tori's Piano Bar at some point.
Talking about the splendor of the Hoover Factory, I knew that you'd agree if you'd seen it too. It's not a matter of life or death, but it doesn't matter if I take another breath. Who cares?
Interesting. And then the final one is the one that really sticks in my craw, and that's
too.
Iggy and the Stooges' "I'm Sick of You," which was on the harpsichord. I read that.
She said it kept breaking down, right?
Some bullshit. And Iggy and the Stooges, one of my all-time favorite bands. They're from Detroit. in 2014, I asked Tori to play an Iggy and the Stooges cover because everybody's asking for covers. It wasn't so off base. You guys asked for covers exactly
She
10
played
years
ours.
ago, and you got it. Crazy, Crazy in Love. Let's remind everybody.
Yes,
I
yes.
asked her for the Stooges, which, allegedly she knows this song, and she was just like,
She give you the
we were in New York, and she said, "Are they from New York?" And I should have said yes, because I think
know.
if I would have said they were from New York, she might have played it. But
We
I
had
said,
to
no,
serve
they're
it up
from
for her.
Detroit. Yeah.
Well, so something that's interesting.
No, ma'am.
Well, first, let me say this. The thing that's interesting about that is that she wasn't able to do it because of the harpsichord. And it is true, apparently, like the reason we only ever got one harpsichord to our album is that the harpsichord literally does break every time she plays it. Like it's not like they had like a tech with them or to like fix it all the time. And so I believe her if like the technician couldn't, do it. But
Maybe she should
the
treat it more nicely.
Or use
Well, but-
a
But the thing
keyboard.
that's interesting about it though is that her cover of Heart of Gold musically covers I Want to Be Your Dog by the Stooges. And so she's using Neil Young's lyrics, but the music is almost exactly I Want to Be Your Dog. And so she still
good.
does cover the Stooges in a sense. And I once taught that to my students. We listened to Heart of Gold, listened to I Want to Be Your Dog, and then I played Tori's Heart of Gold to like think about this idea of text and conversation, like the sort of like melding of the two ideas. Even though she doesn't necessarily, I don't think ever said that it was I Want to Be Your Dog, but it's very, very obvious when you hear it. Like it's pretty much the exact, like that's the music they played, and then she sings Heart of Gold lyrics instead. So she does still honor the Stooges, and maybe that's part of it. I thought you were going to also name Marlene Dietrich's favorite poem by Peter
I had
Murphy,
that
which is
too,
the one.
yeah.
That's the one that I couldn't believe that she couldn't figure out how to do that. I don't believe her. I think she just didn't. She couldn't do it like emotionally or something. It made her too sad thinking about her own mother or something. Because that
It's
song
such a
is one of
good
my favorite
song.
songs of all time, and I'm shocked she's never done it live. I mean, it's just it's such a
It's a Tori
cover.
Amos song. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
it's
basically a Tori
amazing.
Amos song.
It's
And
amazing. Yeah.
I always envision that song sort of being in a similar vibe as like a Carbon or something like very sort of epic and cinematic and sweeping and romantic. It's just a gorgeous song. Peter Murphy.
Yeah,
And maybe
it's
we'll
so
put together a little playlist, an alternate playlist with all of the original songs and these that did not make the record, and do a little supplementary Strange Little Boys playlist for everybody.
Oh,
I like that. That's cute.
that's sweet.
Weird little boys. Weird.
So, what is everybody's first experience of hearing the record? Do you recall?
I recall listening to a sampler, I believe, of the record ahead of the actual record being released. At the time, my somewhat new relationship, so I'd been in a relationship for about a year at that point, my very first relationship. And he was going away to Germany to study and do some work on his degree. And it was very, very sad because it was the first time we had been apart in that entire time. So I was grappling with that and listening to this sampler, driving around, probably working at Applebee's or something. And the sampler was great. And I remember I got pulled over and got a speeding ticket, my only speeding ticket, while I was listening to the sampler.
Oh, wow.
And Christopher, my ex, and I were messaging back and forth, and I was telling him about the music because it had come out after he left, and there wasn't a way back then to easily deliver music to people so they could also hear it. He asked me to describe it, and I said, well, there's a lyric in one of the songs that says she tries her luck with the traffic police out of boredom more than spite, and that actually happened to me today. But my experience with the album overall, when I first heard it, I think at the time, Kristen, you said it best. I don't think I fully understood it. I don't think I fully got it at the time. I was approaching it at two different. It was very like chewy on like an intellectual level. There was a lot to dig into, but then on the musical side, it was stark. So those contrasts at the time made it very hard for me to find a way in that was enjoyable to want to spend time with that whole record. And again, that's something that stuck with me through my listening career. That I'm not listening to this record all at once because I think it is a little bit overwhelming and maybe emotionally scrambly. It just it's not something I want to sit with in long periods of time. But at the time, I think I felt that too. I just didn't know how to articulate it. And now, it gets interspersed in with, I think, the other stuff more than it gets listened to as a whole. How about you guys?
So I, through a very generous, lovely person, got a leaked copy of it.
Not me.
No, it wasn't you. A few months before it came out. So I was on summer break, about to go into my sophomore year of college, and I was sent a burned copy of it, but it was missing Happiness is a Warm Gun because she wasn't finished with that yet. And yeah, I was sort of by myself in New Jersey, like listening to it with nobody besides, like my sister and my cousin to share it with, because I wasn't really around anybody and I wasn't going to leak it or give it to anybody. But I was really eager to share information about it because people still weren't even sure. There was still debate about whether or not it was a covers album. So though I was Bobby the Bee Collector on the forums, I made an alternate account that was named Sick Little Fox. And even though I thought it was Fox, I did Fox. And I wrote a review of it. And I wrote a really detailed, generous, detailed review. And
they came for him.
They fucking came for me. Nobody believed me. I got attacked. No one believed it. No one. It was wild. I was like, whoa, you people are crazy. This is real.
But remember, we've dissected this. It was a shooting the messenger situation because people didn't want it to be a covers album.
They didn't want a covers album. They didn't want to hear the details. They didn't believe me. And I was even, I was giving details about the way things sounded, and I was answering questions. It was and ask me anything if you want to. And it was just it was so wild. I was all right, I'm gonna have to delete this account. And shortly after the press release comes out, it's a covers album. The track listings, everything I said. I didn't need to feel I had no desire to feel vindicated, but I felt really taken aback. I was like, this is so weird. I would be so happy to read this if somebody, posted this. And I'm sure there's some who were, but you two might have been among them. I don't know.
It wasn't me. I was really upset it was a covers album. This is I wanted to hear Tori's voice, but I thought it was I felt like the fuck you to Atlantic was a fuck you to us as fans as well. And again, I didn't get it. I didn't get what she was trying to do.
Right.
And now I understand. And now and the thing is the album is incredible, right? It's just so much of what she does, it just immediately hooks you in. If you're a born and bred Tori Amos fan, it's really hard to put this on and not be shit, okay, she's a genius as usual.
And she gave us a tour that contextualized the record. It was an incredible tour. And then we got another album and another fucking year of a tour right after it. So
and that had 2 years, 21, 22, 23.
2 years. Yeah.
Boom.
So she, basically we were eating really good and we didn't know it at the time,
we didn't know. Yeah.
And it turned out to be so, I think everybody who was upset about it being a covers album forgave it because 9/11 happens. It's this collective trauma. And she, unlike almost every other musician, did not cancel her tour, but went out and did meet and greets and, toured theaters and, was with everybody in that moment. So,
and let me tell you, that's what a star does.
Oh,
that's right. A star has a baby, goes on the road post 9/11 when things are very uncertain and volatile in the country. And if you weren't around during that time, it was really a kind of crazy time.
Yeah, very
and
scary.
tense, very tense.
I mean, that
And
building was still smoking when she was out there on
yeah,
tour. Like, it's wild to me
yeah.
that
Yeah,
she
she
stepped
played New
foot in
York
the Beacon
City.
Theater
It was
a month
early,
later.
like, yeah, it was like early October. Like she was like, yeah, it was still.
Tori is of the stock of the show must go on. Like Tori does
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
not cancel a show unless something is very, very bad. And that's the kind of trooper mentality to me that connects her to people who are legends like Judy Garland, that same
Yeah.
sort of like reciprocal involvement and energy that's given and taken from the audience and the artist. That's very, very singular. And very needed, right? Everybody goes there needing something
Yeah.
from the artist, but she also needs something from those people.
She needed it too during that time. It was like she couldn't just sit home on her hands with a record and, you know, sitting there scared. And that's not her. She's a courageous woman, and she doesn't back down. And I think that she was really insistent that they were going to do it, and they did it. And that tour is legendary, and it's many people's favorite tour by a mile for many. She sounded incredible. The set lists were varied and interesting, and she did interesting covers on that tour, and she wore more interesting outfits. And I have to wonder, do you think it's possible, guys, that she was going to do a little more character work, but didn't feel like it was appropriate after 9/11? Like, do you think in a world where 9/11 didn't happen and she still released this record, if she would have been more playful with the concept on stage, or what do you think?
That's a really good question. When we got the visual element, when we got visual confirmation that, she's doing this character thing, that's where my mind went to, like, oh, is she going to do some kind of different show? I just know, I knew like the practicalities of it. Like there were too many characters, there were too many looks, I think it would just be too hard to work out in person nightly with a kid, and even with help, even with Kevin there doing the makeup himself, you wouldn't be achieving sort of like, I think the optimal look like she did when she, again, focused and knew exactly what she was going for with ADP. I think it worked more there where it couldn't have worked here. I don't think that at that stage of her career, she would have probably gone there yet. I think she needed a little bit more time.
I don't think so. I feel like, not that the character work has to be campy or silly. You could, like Pip was not, Pip was terrifying. But I just feel like she was very buttoned up at this point, and I think that she was still on her mission. Matt and I have talked a lot about Tori on a mission, and I think that may have taken away from the message that she was trying to send, and that's why I think she showed up in her suit looking fly as fuck, keep it simple, like a woman in a man's world kind of thing. So I don't think so, but I think that she got, in the following 10 years, she got to start to have a little fun with herself.
I do think that the starkness of the stage looks and the starkness of that show were probably influenced by that time period somberness. And, I don't know if you guys remember this, but when they did like the award shows during that time period, people were very dressed down, no frills, not a lot of jewelry. It was a time where people were really pulling back and really simplifying, as you said. Things were a little bit more simplified. And what happened? Like, why aren't people now doing the same goddamn thing? I think everything was a little bit more dialed back, probably because of that. And it worked, she didn't compromise on quality. She didn't compromise on anything in those shows. And I think they were really appropriate for the time.
Let me ask you guys another question. Do you think if she opted not to tour after 9/11 and she didn't tour the record, do you think that people's feelings about that album would be different than they are now? Like, do you think that she, again, I go back to this idea of contextualizing a record on tour. Do we think the reception would have been like different? Do you think that people would not, like, would it feel like a throwaway record to people? Do we think that she would have eventually covered those songs anyway when she did tour for Scarlet's Walk? Like, what do we think would have happened if she was just not on tour that year? What do you think?
I don't think the tour and the records reception have anything to do with each other necessarily for this record. That's just my opinion, and from an outsider perspective with no sort of like intel at all on this period at all, you know. But it is sort of a time where people are probably not going to see her show because of the record necessarily, right? And it's not like she's playing 10 songs from Strange Little Girls at the 2001 show. She's really diversifying. She's really digging deep and
that's
peppering
maybe the first
in
time,
some
right,
covers.
that she was ever not touring the album fully, right? Like that was the first time that she'd ever done that.
Right. So I don't think those two things necessarily go hand in hand. That's just me.
That makes sense.
I don't know. I'm trying to think back how, it was before streaming music. And if I recall correctly, you would leave the show and then they would be selling the albums, selling other albums.
Right.
And I could see cases where somebody went to see Tori and they went and bought the album and then possibly felt different about it. I think, for me, yes, like that always helps me. We've talked about how like I fell in love with Selkie after hearing it live and did not like it before. So I think that it is possible, but especially because there wasn't access to streaming. But I don't know. I feel like Tori is very like, you love her or hate her and there's no in between. And so I don't know. The reception is the reception, and that's like marketing and PR already at work before you even step foot on the road. So I don't really know.
And I do want to add here that I'm not sure that selling records, this record, was maybe Tori's main goal at that point, right? And I think she had a bigger goal of holding space for people who were going through a really tough time who were coming to see her. I think that was really, really deeply important to her. So I don't necessarily think that, album sales were the number one goal with the tour. Although that's a really good point that you make about having things for sale in a way that they're not anymore.
Yeah,
do they
like
sell
picking up
albums
some
after?
like picking up some sales. I think they sell vinyls more
I
now,
think
right?
vinyls get sold now. Yeah.
Yeah. See, it's
So old.
I was so old, and like I only recently got into buying vinyl stuff, but now I just like buy it when it's announced, pre-release. Like I'm not gonna go in person and buy it now. And plus, like they never even stock anything anyway. The whole situation is very different. But I remember those merch tables being swarmed, people buying albums, and that just, you don't see that anymore.
The merch was good this tour. And I had this really weird window cling thing. Do you guys remember those? Like a thing that you could stick to your window and like advertise that you were listening to Strange Little Girls.
Like this dirty dish rag.
Oh,
I'm going to sleep in this tonight like a psycho.
You are gross.
With that, shall we start to mess?
Oh my God, I'm so excited. Yes.
Ooh,
Okay, who's messing first?
Well, according to the agenda, hold on.
Is it me?
I believe it's Kristen Keys. I'm going last.
Okay.
Joey, you're in the middle.
Okay.
I'm fine to go first because I did something apropos to how I felt about this album in 2001, which is I did, Tori's female's reflections and then a female interpretation of men's songs. I did a human's reflection of AI generated playlist.
Topical. Oh my God.
So topical. So what I've done is I did this a few times. I told ChatGPT that and we pay for the premium, so it's a little bit better than your basic bitch ChatGPT. So I told ChatGPT that I have a Tori. It knows, so it like learns your information over time. It knows we have a Tori Amos podcast. It knows what it's called. I know. I told it what we're here to do. And I said, I tend to be skewed towards narrative arcs. So give me a few examples of some playlists. Then I found one which it claims is a narrative arc. I haven't looked at the justification behind it, but I did pull the playlist together and I put it in this order. And I listened to it and I liked how it flowed. So I thought I could read what ChatGPT said, why it chose it, and if I agree with that or not. Caveat is I did say to add After All and Only Women Bleed as from the bonus tracks because I really love them. I did not see this tour live because I was mad at Tori for the covers album. So I didn't go to a show. But I, of course, became obsessed with bootlegs because the shows are fucking incredible, especially those 3 Beacon shows, 1, 2, 3. But After All.
Do you regret it? Do you regret not going to those shows?
There was some good Texas shows on that tour.
Sure. I regret not going to every single Tori Amos show I never went to, right?
That's a good point.
Oh my God.
Do you not?
Yeah.
Like, I always feel like I
hear you.
could do more. So let's see what AI has in store for us. So again, I have listened to the order. I did like it, and I made some observations on why I thought ChatGPT put it together, knowing I like a narrative arc. Okay, here we go. ChatGPT says, here's a narrative arc of this Strange Little Girls album with the addition of the B-sides Only Women Bleed and After All. So ChatGPT has decided to start with Strange Little Girl, which I will say I think is... I only listen to this album straight through. I know I've said that a few times, but I got this album. I was 17. I had taken my Gap Kids money and put a sick ass CD player in my car. And so I was driving around. This was brand new. So I really listened to this album straight through. But, when you're mixing around, when you got to pick, and if you're going to go with your kind of favorite song from the album, I think Strange Little Girl is a great place to start. So ChatGPT says, innocence in the beginning of the journey, a young girl navigating a world that misunderstands her. I think there's like definitely some innocence in that song. I guess I agree with that. And I think it is a good song to open with. So next, it did Heart of Gold. And it says, the search for purity and goodness, driven by an idealistic desire to find something true in a complex world. I like that if we're going from kind of like naivete, like innocence, and kind of like descending into a world of madness. But I actually am going to suggest that we cut Heart of Gold. Is it controversial? It is.
Go ahead.
Just speak.
I love Neil Young, and I love real Heart of Gold, and it's really hard for me because I want a stripped down Heart of Gold, Tori, and the piano, and it's not that, and that's okay. I know.
She did not give you that.
She did not.
Subverted those expectations. Yep.
She's not a jukebox. She's let us know. So I'm going to go ahead and recommend I cut it from this playlist, but I didn't want to tell ChatGPT what I was going to do quite yet.
Got it.
Is ChatGPT going to cut anything, or is ChatGPT only going to give you the whole album?
It gave me the whole album, and it's a
And she's
human
making
reflection. It's a human's reflection on a robot, and I've already cut Heart of Gold.
This is what happens when you listen to Tori Amos records. You come up with concepts
Of a concept.
that are really out there.
It's really out there. Kel thought it was not good, and that's okay. Just how maybe he didn't want to come to this tour of mine, Strange Little Keys. Maybe he didn't want to come, and that's okay. Okay, so After All, a reflective and melancholy moment considering the passage of time and changes it brings. I think that, first of all, I don't know that I would put After All that early, but we're going to go Strange Little Girl to After All because we cut Heart of Gold. And David Bowie's so fucking creepy in a great way. And I don't know, it just feels like a rejection of like 70s kind of hippie culture. Like, I like that we're starting to kind of like rebel. And I think there's no better person to rebel with than David Bowie. So I like that. Time is number 4. Further reflection on the relentless march of time. I like the relentless march of time. Beautiful poetry. And the bittersweet memories it leaves behind. Time is just like a devastating, quiet moment. I obviously can't think of anything other than the Letterman performance of that when I think of that song.
Yeah.
And it's time, time, time. time, time, time.
And I like it paired with After All because I do like a piano heavy, I like a piano forward playlist, as you know.
I remember the bit of trivia that Tori originally did time on the harmonium organ, but then switched it to piano for the release. So that's somewhere in the vault. She has the organ version of it.
Is there a world where she'll just like give us all this shit?
No.
Okay. Well, next we go to Real Men, which ChatGPT says confronting societal norms, questioning what it means to be a real man in a world full of expectations. I think Real Men is one of those songs that when she is singing it, it's a song that I like to hurry up and get to, even though it's like, Joey, you've described songs as like a bleeding wound, or that's how you described,
Mhm.
did you just Under the Pink? Did you describe it as that? Or Voice for Pele?
Or a bruise, I think. Pink's
Either
a
way,
bruise. Yeah.
this song to me is like a bleeding wound, for sure. And I think it is one of those songs that when I heard the recording of it, I could just tell she knows the song inside and out, or at least I think she does. I think she has all the lyrics in her head for real. I think she knows the song well, and that it comes through in the delivery. So even though it's a heavy song, and also like very stark, it is one I do rush to listen to. Then it's I'm Not in Love, and ChatGPT tells us this is because things are starting to fall apart. Emotional repression, the denial of feelings as a way to cope with the complexities of relationships. I actually think that's like not a good interpretation. I mean, it's I guess factual, but it's not deep, and that's why it's
Right.
AI, right? I guess I kind of like I'm Not in Love with Real Men. So I like the way it sounds. I don't know about narrative wise. But that's okay. We'll move on. Rattlesnakes. Anxiety and fear set in, highlighting the vulnerabilities and pressures that come with trying to navigate life. I like this. I buy this. Like I just have this like vision of her speeding down the freeway, just like not getting a speeding ticket and just like running away from real life, like packing your bag and getting the fuck out of town. That's what I picture. And what I do like that, so when I put together the playlist, remember I didn't read it, but I didn't read the reasonings. I was making up my own reasonings. It does rattlesnakes and then Only Women Bleed. And I really like that together. Again, ChatGPT gives me kind of like a basic bitch thing, a poignant exploration of the pain and resilience of women, touching on themes of suffering and endurance. No, what I picture is the girl in Rattlesnakes fleeing a domestic violence situation. And it's like either like it's life or death. She's in or out. And then ChatGPT gave me Happiness is a Warm Gun, which I also like because the themes on violence and gun violence. And after that, I Don't Like Mondays. Obviously, it pairs well with that same theme. And I think the song is it's very literal. It's really well documented what it's about. So I thought it was kind of lame of ChatGPT not to say that, but perhaps I'm asking too much of the robot. The New Age, loss of ideals and disillusionment that comes from confronting the harsh realities of life. I actually would have probably put this after something like actually, maybe it's fine after the gun violence, because to me, thinking about things like 9/11 and Columbine, just like, again, where I am, the age I was, there is kind of like this old world. When you talked about people showing up after 9/11 on award shows being dressed down, that kind of, like we all grew up together, right? So to me, that new age kind of comes after we grow up together. We see like violence in public, safe places that we deem safe and that we experience in a collective way.
Right.
And they're not safe anymore. So there is that new age. So I buy that after Happiness is a Warm Gun and I Don't Like Mondays. Enjoy the Silence. Breakdown of communication, a retreat into silence as a defense against the overwhelming emotions. I feel like that's a throwaway. And last, it puts 97 Bonnie and Clyde at the end, which I will say this album's incredible, so they all sound good together, truly in any order. 97 Bonnie and Clyde, back in the day when we listened to this album, I did not understand how it could go in the front. It felt like really heavy to me. But at the end, I think it makes even less sense. So I would probably put it somewhere like maybe after Happiness is a Warm Gun and I Don't Like Mondays. And again, like that woman kind of in the trunk and she's singing, just to kind of pair those all with like a domestic violence theme. But otherwise, I think it's a good playlist because I think the album is so strong. I really struggle with After All and Only Women Bleed not being included in the actual album proper, but specifically After All, I think it fits so well. Thoughts, opinions, feedback.
So what are you cutting from your playlist?
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to publish the ChatGPT playlist, but I am going to cut Heart of Gold. I mean, I just have to, stir up some shit. Why not? And I'm going to move 97 Bonnie and Clyde to After Only Women Bleed. No, After I Don't Like Mondays.
Okay.
That's all I'm going to change from the ChatGPT playlist.
It's an interesting approach
it.
you took. Okay.
Thank you.
She tried it.
I tried it. I took a swing, just like Tori does. Matt,
Your
what do you
hair-
think of my swing?
Your hair looks really good. All that hair.
All that hair, it's really dirty.
All right, Joseph, we are, oh my God, Larry, so late to be barking.
Naughty.
So boys,
What does
no,
he
no,
want?
No.
Is he at the door? Good Lord.
He's
Okay.
at your dough. He's at your dough. Oh,
He's at my dough. He's at my dough. He's at my dough. Ow, ow. Okay,
Little
let's
friend.
go, boy.
Let's hear it, Joseph. We're ready.
All right. So I did not use AI to do mine. So I want to say that I actually think that the sequencing is perfect on this. I think that Tori got it right.
Yes.
So, and I adore New Age. It's one of my favorite openers. And I love Real Men as a closer. So I just want to state for, posterity, like that I think New Age is incredible. I just can't say enough about it. It's a perfect recording, and Real Men is as well. I love Adrienne Balou's soaring guitar work, that triumphant feeling at the end, despite the fact that she's, talking about these cycles are gonna repeat, and so it goes round again. But there's just something really like forceful and beautiful about that. So I just want to state that I love the beginning and the opening as they are. So now that I've said that, I can mess and play with the order. So mine,
Yes, be free.
I'm free. So my version of Strange Little Girls begins with 97 Bonnie and Clyde. It is the thesis of that record. Most like the conceit of what she's doing is most overt and discomforting and unnerving and in your face. And I think that it makes sense to open that way. I think that it was really important that she forced everybody on tour to listen to it every night before the show started. I know that the jury's out on whether or not she did it behind the stage every night or if it was just like a fresh recording that she did, because it's not the album version. It's another version. Maybe she did it once and then played that one.
The boys at Songs of Tori Amos did.
They found out.
Yeah, they pulled all of the versions that they could, and they like kind of mapped, I don't know the words, but they like mapped the sound waves, and they're slightly different every night. So it does appear that.
So she actually was doing it behind
I'll
stage.
send you the link from the episode. It's fucking mind-blowing. Okay. This is why I love Ephraim. He's going deep on this shit.
That is an insane opener, by the way. I mean, and I think that, when you say it's the thesis of the album, yeah, the thesis couldn't be any clearer, right? I mean, it's just scary. It's
scary, and she's, she was saying something that nobody was really saying at the time. I remember when the album was announced, like Fox News in the morning had like a segment about Tori's cover album, like Tori Amos covering Eminem, and it was like a newsworthy item because at the time Eminem was sort of at the peak of his powers, and that's the thing. Like Tori was so exacting and so like, I don't know, it was so ballsy to do what she did, particularly with that song. Like you could remove 97 Bonnie and Clyde and then the rest of it is just like an interesting covers album, but she needed that, like that, that gag, right? She had to like, is it a bit of a gimmick? Yeah. Did she, as we were talking earlier in text, did she have them build a trunk size box for her to record from so she could get that vocal and that
Dude,
breathing? Like, yes, she did.
shit is
But
dark.
it's dark and it's crazy, but that is why we love her. And so it starts with that. I think it has to begin with that. And then we go from Bonnie and Clyde to Enjoy the Silence, because Enjoy the Silence is the moment that she is with her little girl. Everything she ever wanted is in her arms, and she has just heard 97 Bonnie and Clyde, and she is deciding in this moment that that cannot stand, right? So
I like
she
that.
she's so like her version of 97 Bonnie and Clyde is the way she's hearing it in her head. And she is hearing it as this scary fucking horror movie that the song is. And that is what you're saying, Kristen, about like being alone at night with your baby, nursing, you're up with them, and everything feels, the weight of the world, everything feels like more dangerous and more like the silence and the darkness can really overwhelm you when you're in this
Like
really
Animal.
vulnerable. Yeah, it's very primal. And so to have Enjoy the Silence be the next one makes a lot of sense to me, because it's like, here is what I've heard, and now here is what I'm going to do about it. And then the third song is Happiness is a Warm Gun, because even though I don't think this is fully successful, I think it's my least favorite on the record. I considered even cutting it, but as I played around with it, I thought it was necessary, because there is this like the fact that she just keeps going and going and going with it, and like stretches it out, takes this very short Beatles song and you know, cuts it up and manipulates it and makes it sort of incredibly literal, in terms of you know, she's thinking about violence, she's thinking about gun violence, she's thinking about men enacting this violence, because in Enjoy the Silence, words are like violence, but violence is violence too,
Yeah.
right? And so she and the fact that she just has this like aching like mama part at the end like feels very important. And I think that it's a, you know, she has her father's voice in the beginning, but it's mama who she's calling out for at the end. And I think that that's a really important moment, because you know, this sort of like beating up against the patriarchy, but the last thing she says is mama. And we go from Happiness is a Warm Gun to Real Men, which feels good there after that, because though it is somber and it is a frustrated song and thinking about homophobia and all of the gender roles that were boxed into, and you know, thankfully it's lessening in society, but we're seeing the backlash now, and you know, to that sort of, you know, freedom, and that breaking of the binaries. And I think that I'm with you. Like, she knows this song, she delivers it in a way that feels like this is something she played at the hotels in the 70s and 80s, right? Like, it's just such an incredible song. And again, she's preoccupied with guns on this record. Like, they are on her mind. This album could almost be a concept album, like an anti-gun or pro gun regulation album as well, right? And so we go from Real Men to Raining Blood, because we're trapped in purgatory, right? This cycle. And you know, it's funny because the original Slayer song is so like it's almost funny to listen to them back to back. But what she does, the way she just milks this into like a something 3 times as long as the original, this dirge, you feel, she had that quote in Spin that I'm gonna paraphrase, but even paraphrasing it is crazy. Matt knows the one, where she said that she recorded Raining Blood imagining a big juicy vagina bleeding down over the Taliban,
Right.
which is such a crazy like vivid image. But
Yo, I
speaking,
don't know what this means, but ChatGPT forgot Raining Blood on all of my versions of this.
yeah,
Isn't that
I
weird?
was wondering, yeah.
Mm. It
You have,
wants only women bleed instead.
I guess so.
That's what it wants.
And so we go from Raining Blood to I Don't Like Mondays, because there's sort of this inverse lullaby quality to it, the way she covers that. And her I Don't Like Mondays sounds very different from the original Boomtown Rats one. And there's sort of this, I don't know, there's kind of this like fantasy of gun violence. I feel like her version is imagining like a fantasy of a girl enacting this violence that's typically male. And I then follow it up with New Age, because we go from that strong Rhodes oscillation into the Wurlitzer of New Age. And I think they almost sound like they could be part of the same song. So when you listen to them side by side, but it's the beginning of a New Age. Like this is, we're going out of this. She's moving into this, like away from the very masculine, misogynistic, like first half of the record into a more feminine, powerful. She's stepping into female power here. So we go from New Age to I'm Not in Love, because New Age and I'm Not in Love sort of speak to similar, reclaiming of the sexual self and not being beholden to men. And I'm Not in Love, the original song is, a guy, sort of gaslighting woman that he's with, and saying, you'll wait a long time for me, and the original has that female voice saying, big boys don't cry. So it's like this total, like, manipulative, I'm not in love with you, I don't want you, but you're like a siren who's still tempting me. And her version of it, this like goth version of it, with that sort of like, that sort of like weird hellish drill that's going in the background. Fun fact, I wish I still had the CD, but the version of I'm Not in Love on that early version that I got had a few tinkles of piano in it, and I wish that I'd kept it. I've never heard it anywhere since. It was longer, it had a longer intro and longer outro, and it was almost like Suede, where there's the bit of piano, there's like a little flourish of piano just like in the distance in one part, and I hate that I don't still have it somewhere. We go from I'm Not in Love to Heart of Gold, because Heart of Gold is such an earnest song, but her version of it is so wicked. And it feels like the rising madness of this New Age I'm Not in Love, Heart of Gold. It is so chaotic, it is so witchy, it is such a, it's like an incantation at the end, the keep me, keep me, keep me, keep me, and the give me over and over, in the way they're like, it's just such a wild vocal performance. I really like that she, for Happiness is a Warm Gun and Heart of Gold, arguably the two most famous songs that she covered, she was like, well, they're so famous, they're so well known, so I have to completely fuck the expectation of what anybody thinks they're going to sound like. And I really appreciate the way it sounds. I just think it's great. I think it's wild and vocally adventurous, and I just love that forceful, I've been in my mind, it's such a fine line at the end where she's like, just this, her voice, like she's doing different things. Every layer is different on that. She really, really goes for it on Heart of Gold.
I feel like you could really, in the recording session, that last Heart of Gold, I feel like you could just like see her like bitch slapping the microphone at the end. Like, you can see what she's doing, or you can hear what she's doing.
She went hard on that. So then we go from Heart of Gold to Rattlesnakes, because the fever breaks, and then Rattlesnakes, and she's melancholic, and she's still, she does want love, but love is your great disappointment, and the never born child part is important, because I think that it speaks to that sort of loss that she still feels, even though Tash is in her arms. I think Tori is still haunted by, the babies that she didn't have. And Rattlesnakes is just such a beautiful, perfect song. It's such a great cover. The original Lloyd Cole one is a great song too, and hers is so respectful of it, but yet just so much, feels so much more serious than his, or something, like feels more,
the tone is so much different. His is almost like buoyant and joyous, where she is again somber. dialing it down. Yeah.
Very, very somber. So from Rattlesnakes, we go to Time, because it's the clearest moment of just vocal and piano, and it's time that you love, and that's an important. It was so prescient. I don't think she realized that that song would be such a anthem for 9/11, and the Letterman performance, and the coincidence of the bodies spilling into the streets, and just sort of one of those like really serendipitous inclusions. And we end the album with Strange Little Girl, because Strange Little Girl, where are you going? She's going on this journey through America. Strange Little Girl feels like it sets up what's to come with Scarlet's Walk, sort of her leaving in the distance. And I love After All, and I looked for a place. I don't think After All thematically for me really fits the concept. I think she wanted to record a Bowie song that she loved, and I'm sure she has a reasoning in her head. I like what you had to say about it, Kristen, and I'm a little more convinced through that. But as much as I love it, and I really do love it, I just didn't feel like it fit here. I like Only Women Bleed, but not enough to replace another song. And I thought that one more kind of quiet, sad moment on this record would just make it burst. So I left it out. So yeah.
I like that. I like that a lot. I like what you're saying. So I think Only Women Bleed. I think what that song does to me, not only, but a little bit, the raining the vagina, the blood down on the Taliban.
Yeah.
I feel like that's obviously Only Women Bleed is about domestic violence,
Sure,
but I still
sure.
feel like that's like, it's like the double entendre of the whole thing. That's
Well,
what
and she also does the interesting thing at the end where she changes the pronouns at the end.
Right.
She smokes and drinks and she don't come home at all.
I love that. You remember I used to have that like on my like profile? I love it. That's me.
Yeah.
I mean, old me.
I like that she makes that little change, and I think it's meaningful, but also maybe confuses it within the concept a little bit for me. So I don't know. So I do also love it, but I just thought those two could stay as B-sides.
Did you give one of my kids the David Bowie book, the kids' David Bowie book? It's like a little children's book.
It's possible. It's possible I did a long time ago.
There's one David Bowie, and this was like Luca loved. Remember, Luca used to wear dresses all the time, and he really loved this David Bowie book, and it was specifically because it talked about him as a style icon. And there's a whole section in the little book where it's like people didn't know if he was a boy or a girl, but David was just happy to be himself. And so I think there's a little bit of like, there's reflections on queerness with real men, but I think there is this kind of like, kind of non-binary thing that David Bowie has going on. So even like 23 years ago, I don't think that it, I think it would have made sense in that way, I guess.
Yeah. No, that does make sense to me. Yeah. Okay, Matthew, take it away.
Okay, so I went in a narrative direction myself. I couldn't stop imagining a story, and I think because of the 97 Bonnie and Clyde, because of all of the violence on this record, it's, I think, I don't want to say easy, but it's natural to assign sort of like a domestic violence sort of theme or narrative to this record. And I took a couple of liberties that I'm probably going to get yelled at for, but it's all in service of my narrative.
Okay, we'll see.
So I was really one album in particular I was thinking about when I was thinking of this record was Nick Cave's Murder Ballads. I thought of it as maybe like a little bit of a kindred spirit.
I can see that.
And I kind of took inspiration from the theme of murder ballads for this playlist. I've said this for a really long time. I do think America has a sick preoccupation with violence toward women, and especially murder and sexual assault of women as a form of entertainment. And we see it played out all the time. We see women like Whitney Houston, Amy Winehouse, Britney Spears, Lindsay Lohan, Anna Nicole Smith sort of like feeding into that narrative that the press really likes to play with of women crashing and burning and ultimately dying usually. I think there's a really sick fascination with that. So to me, that is a big part of what I'm looking at on this record too. And one of the examples I can think of in film and entertainment that really exemplifies that is Twin Peaks. When everybody was so interested in this dead girl, Laura Palmer. Mm-hmm. So Twin Peaks kind of factors into this playlist in a way too. The vibe.
That's Joey's thing. That's awesome.
The dead young prom queen. Yeah. Okay, so here we go, and maybe some controversies here because I did some things. So I'm going to start my playlist with Raining Blood. Right off the top, we're going to have a mood. We're going to have blood. It's a horror film. It's scary. And I think this song is so fucking scary, like beginning to end. It's just terrifying. She did a really great job of conjuring a certain mood with that song, so I really like starting it off with that song. And from there I wanted some contrast, so we go directly into Heart of Gold.
Okay.
And
that's
I think
fun.
Just the abrasiveness of that, the abruptness of that switch in tone really got me excited. So after Heart of Gold, I'm going to do something crazy. I'm going to put Do It Again in after Heart of Gold.
What?
And then after Do It Again, I'm going to go with I'm Not in Love. So Heart of Gold, Do It Again, and I'm Not in Love, all songs from a similar era, early 70s. I love what she did with all of them, and I think I'm Not in Love fits tonally with what they're doing on this record, honestly. The strong voice, the spare production, the, kind of ominous beats. So after...
Buy it.
I'm not... What's that?
I buy it.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, so after I'm Not in Love, we're going to go right into 97 Bonnie and Clyde. I'm not in love, so I'm going to murder you.
Right.
And I've listened to 97 Bonnie and Clyde more in the last week than I probably have in my entire life. That last note of the orchestra, the way the orchestra kind of just like gets you at the end, like a Hitchcock film or just something like a knife slashing, it's just really evocative. All of the sounds on that particular song. And this is a song, and let's just say it, like the vocal delivery here is so intense. It's so, it could have easily been something that went in a bad direction. She could have been mocked for what she was doing here, but the way she approached it with such seriousness, with such dedication to tell that particular story, to me, as somebody who is a storyteller, as a writer, that she saw a way into this song in that way, it makes my imagination go wild. Like it just really, it's just a genius, really crazy genius move.
Maddie, you know what I like about I'm Not in Love and 97 Bonnie and Clyde together is, I've spent many a day back in the day driving around listening to these songs, knowing what 97 Bonnie and Clyde is about and knowing that she got in the little box to record it. I always thought those like little sounds in I'm Not in Love sounded like somebody like drilling you in a box,
Oh,
so
God.
I know it's really dark, but it just...
No, there's a drill in there. You're right.
Right.
Yep.
It just... That's always what I imagined. I think because I'm claustrophobic, like it just,
Ooh.
I don't know. Anyway.
I mean, so after 97 Bonnie and Clyde, I'm again going to put in a cover from the past, and I think it fits here. It's going to be Down by the Seaside with Robert Plant. After 97 Bonnie and Clyde.
I'm just going to go to bed, guys. I'll see.
What the fuck are you talking about?
It fits in with the dark vision I have of a woman in a box being thrown into the ocean, okay? I'm only sinking. What? It fits with the darkness here. So after, and also I allowed Robert Plant because he's sort of like beyond gender. He defies gender. So
Agree. Okay.
So after that song, then we have Enjoy the Silence, because you're in a box in the ocean. You've been murdered. Kristen and Joey think it's so funny that this
Joey
woman's
can't
dead.
Get over it.
So
wait, what's after Down by the Seaside? Sorry.
Enjoy the Silence.
Enjoy the silence.
Oh, okay. Joey's out. Joey doesn't want to do the podcast anymore.
God.
Kidding.
I'm sorry,
kidding.
it's not only women bleed. Sorry. Okay, so after
You cunt.
Enjoy the Silence, the perspective shifts to the young girl who witnessed all of this and was made an accomplice to all of this violence. Were you going to say something, Kristen?
No, I like where you're.
Oh.
I like this. You're drawing me in.
So I will tell you right now, I cut Happiness is a Worm Gun,
Okay.
and I like the original song a lot. I'm not a huge Beatles fan, but that is a Beatles song that I think really is great. I was so excited for her to do it, and for me, as a cover, as a Beatles cover, I see where she was going. I appreciate what she was doing. It's just, for me, not fitting this narrative, and is a little bit, it's just a little bit too much of a jam for me to fit in with that stark contrast that I love about this album. So it's a little bit too much of a jam. But so instead, I've put in here, after Enjoy the Silence, a different Beatles cover, She's Leaving Home,
Oh, I do love that song.
which I think is really nice with Enjoy the Silence. It's a little bit mournful. I like the instrumentation. Her voice is so beautiful with that guitar. And then from there, She's Leaving Home, Strange Little Girl. Where are you going? I like those three songs where the perspective for me shifts from a woman being murdered to a young woman figuring out where her place is in the world and trying to escape the violence that she was put through in the first half of the record. And from Strange Little Girl, it naturally felt like I should put I Don't Like Mondays right after that. Strange Little Girl, of course. Then I Don't Like Mondays, of course, references a very famous mass shooting in the UK that was perpetrated by a young woman. So from I Don't Like Mondays, I'm going to go ahead and put another older cover in here, and that's going to be Smells Like Teen Spirit.
I thought about that. Yeah, sure.
Because it thematically fits right in here. Load up your guns, bring your friends, it's fun to lose and to pretend, feeds into the, speaks to the narrative in I Don't Like Mondays to me. And then after Smells Like Teen Spirit, another possible controversial inclusion for you guys is going to be Swimming Pools, her Kendrick Lamar cover.
What the fuck is happening? Okay, this is an updated Strange Little Girls. I'm with you. I get it.
Yeah, and it also speaks to addiction, I think, at this point. Especially we're thinking about it with Kurt Cobain and everything that he went through. So I think having another moment where you sort of come out of that rather than succumb to it was important to my narrative. And after Swimming Pools, we do Real Men, which you guys have said everything about Real Men that I'd say. It's beautiful. It's a beautifully recorded song. Heartfelt. The F slur is used, not for the first time in the Tori Amos universe, but she's a friend, so she can use it. From Real Men, we go into Rattlesnakes. Can't think of a better cover than this. I mean, this is a Tori Amos song.
Yeah.
This is so beautifully delivered, and it's just I also think it gives us a little bit of a peek into the future where we're going to go with Scarlet's Wall. From Rattlesnakes, we go into Time, important key track from this era. Beautiful delivery, very soulful again. Nothing cut. I believe it's the full lyrics, the full song, and I don't think this one could have been any better. And timely and captured the sort of lightning in a bottle of that moment. And then I'm going to end with New Age. The beginning of a new age. You know me, I'm so optimistic and so sunny that I like to end on an up note after all that murder and after all that chaos and after all of that like really bad shit, is new age. And again, like, I hate to hyper focus on vocal delivery, but that's really for me one thing that I'm obsessed with on this record. And new age, I love. I'm with you, Joey. I'm with you, Kristen. It is iconic as a first song. It just it's sexy. It seduces you. It's a seduction. So I like it at the end because it gives us hope, corny as it may be. But I wanted to add one thing that I'm obsessed with vocal work to begin with. Like, I love when actors do it. I love an accent. I love, very interesting vocal intonations. I've had the chance in my career to interview the actress Ellen Burstyn. I've also had the great opportunity to work with Ellen Burstyn more than once. And funny enough, I introduced Ellen Burstyn to Jane Goodall once. I'm going to post that picture with our social media as we go live. For those who don't know who Ellen Burstyn is, iconic, legendary actress, The Exorcist, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, Oscar winner, Requiem for a Dream. She is 93 or 94 years old, still acting, still incredible. But I asked her when I interviewed her about a movie she made in 1980 called Resurrection, which is a movie about a spiritual healer. And the spiritual healer gets into an accident and gets sent back to her family, who live on a farm in the Midwest. And there's a scene at the end where Ellen is talking to her grandmother, who's played by an actress named Eva Le Gallienne, who was a woman in her 80s, who was a theater actress. This is the only time she was ever in a film. And she has a really small role as a grandma. And there's a scene in it, and Ellen said, there's a scene where I say goodbye to her, and she says, it's the last time she'll ever see me. And I say, will you save me a place on the other side? She says, I'll save it for you. And just before that, I say something about love. And she says, if we could all just love each other the way that we say we love him, I expect there wouldn't be all the bother in the world. Every time she said it, I burst into tears. She did something magical when she said the word love. I don't know how she did it. It was like she dropped her voice into her heart and the word love would come straight out of her heart.
That's Tori Ellen.
And that's exactly how I felt when I was listening to just simple things like the delivery of one word and what impact that can make. And
it makes me tear up, Mesa style.
It's so good. So I was really thinking a lot about that one scene, and I maybe I can find it on YouTube or something. But Eva Le Gallienne was like, again, a legendary theater actress in her 80s, making her film debut, and ended up getting an Oscar nomination for this part that was a little bit of a throwaway. And when she says that one word, that's the effect. I mean, I get a little bit teary just thinking of watching it. It's such a beautiful moment, so pure. The movie is really incredible.
I've never seen it. I'm gonna have to watch it.
It was on Criterion for a little bit. I don't know where it is now, but there's a good edition of it out there.
Maddie, cool. I have some thoughts on the playlist.
Okay.
Incredible. I love all these gags because I know you're really turning it up a notch. Shocked that you included swimming pools, but I'm here for this like updated vibe. Too much of a jam, you said, on Happiness is a Worm Gun. And I think that's what I failed to convey about Heart of Gold. Because when you're talking about the ending, the delivery of the lyrics, or the delivery of the music, it's incredible, the vocal performance. So it's not like, I don't like this song. It's more like it's too much of a jam for what I'm going for in that session. Listening to you talk, Maddie, I thought it was interesting. I feel like Famous Blue Raincoat could have even fit on your playlist. And I like that you didn't, because to me, she did that a lot,
I've heard that song a lot.
Right.
I love hearing it live. It's a beautiful cover. I'm always looking for the balance between solo piano work and the atmospheric stuff that really defines the music of the era. And I feel like when you start putting in too many solo piano things, it maybe dilutes the mood that's conjured if they're not there. With something like Unrepentant Geraldines, they're purposefully put there so it feels natural to have a lot of those specific piano vocal only songs.
Yeah.
But for this, I wanted to be mindful of having too many, which is why I don't have Only Women Bleed. I don't have After All. I don't really care for Only Women Bleed, if I'm being honest. I think it's fine. It's not something I rush out to listen to frequently, but After All is something I listen to pretty regularly, and I'd listen to it more if it were more readily available to me somehow. But it seems fine to keep that in the B-side realm and not sort of interject it into some of these other moments, because for me, again, it was really about conjuring certain moods in certain sections of the story.
Amazing. Good job, boys.
Okay. So do we have a favorite moment to close out on?
I will go first. The one that kind of comes to mind without putting too much thought in it is man makes a gun, man goes to war, man can kill.
That's mine. You got
Swells.
mine.
It swells. Yep. It's so fucking good.
Yep. That's mine. I'm with you.
That's crazy that we picked the same one.
Truly disturbing. It's hard for me to pick a moment here. It's tough. I am going to go with the lyric delivery of I've been to Hollywood, I've been to Redwood, the second delivery. Yeah. I mean, I think, again, Ellen Burstyn said it best. She didn't deliver those lyrics from her heart. She delivered them from like another realm. And, just those words, now that I've lived in Hollywood and I've had some crazy things happen to me there, and I've worked in the Hollywood film industry for a long time, and things are not looking good in it right now. They resonate with me those words resonate with me in a completely different way. But I think anyone who's ever had a dalliance with Hollywood or with some sort of dark experience in Hollywood, those particular words are going to really ring true. And the way that she sort of like spits them out like fire says it all to me. And it's one of her most, I think, harrowing vocal deliveries, period.
Yeah. It's one of the songs, if I had like a list of 5 songs where I could go in and I could hear the root vocals, because I'm sure there are just so many, they must have looped and mixed many different recording sessions or pieces of tape for that, because it's so many Tori voices on top of each other. It's not just the 2 sisters. It's more. It's like it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and feels just like, like a cloud.
It's like a army of harpies coming in to attack. That's how it feels.
It feels like war. Yeah, it feels like they're running at you. It's intense. Yeah, well said. Perfect note to end on. This was great. Everybody, thank you for watching and listening. Please follow us on YouTube and Instagram. Rate, subscribe, review, give us 5 stars. Tell your friends. We have 2 albums left in the canon. Season 1, we have Night of Hunters coming next, and then our season finale, of course, the epic, the opus, the otherworldly Boys for Pele. So you have those to look forward to. Love you guys. Thanks for chatting.
Love you.
Anytime. Night night.
Bye.
Night.
Change plan, don't know how to treat a lady, don't know how to be a man. Time to admit what you call defeat, 'cause there's women running past you now and you just drag your feet. Man makes a gun, man goes to war, man can kill it, man can drink it, man can take a war. Kill all the blacks, kill all the between the sexes, then there'll be no people left. And so it goes, go round.